Excellent. Attorney Casanova, let's talk about BCDA. Let's define it for our viewers. What is BCDA and what is its purpose, its mission, vision?
Yes, well, if you would recall, and just to give you a brief historical context, when the Philippines was a nascent democracy in 1986, we had a series of coup d'etat, which isolated the Philippines from global investment community. And then in 1918, after the bloodiest coup d'etat, we had the Baguio earthquake, which devastated northern Luzon. And then a year after that, the Mount Pinatubo eruption, and also the dislocation of the base workers in the U.S. military bases.
Because of the pullout of the Americans.
Pullout of the Americans. So you had the economy in shambles. You have devastated infrastructure. The country is in complete, almost in chaos because of these problems. And BCDA was created to address some of these problems, and because we needed to generate funds to rehabilitate central and northern Luzon. So we decided to, President Cory decided to privatize the Fort Bonifacio to raise the funds, and the process of which went to the AFP modernization, and also a part of that went to the rehabilitation of central and northern Luzon. That's why we're able to clear and rehabilitate Subic, Clark, Poro Point, and John Hay. And then in Fort Bonifacio, we're able to move the operating units of the military, which has always threatened the civilian authority, to Tanay now. And we're able to contribute, as of this time, about 24 billion to the AFP modernization.
Since the inception of the BCDA, the agency has contributed 24 billion to AFP modernization. How about police? Is there any fund? Because once upon a time, PC was part of Philippine Constabulary. Do any of the funds go to the PNP?
They're about 1% of the proceeds. 1%. Goes to the, but because mainly because this is a Fort Bonifacio. These are military camps.
Of course.
So there's a need to really modernize our armed forces, and the current events that are happening now actually demands that we support this modernization much more stronger than before.
Now, Attorney, example, you mentioned Fort Bonifacio. This is an army, the home of the Philippine Army. Does it mean that if you privatize portions of Fort Bonifacio, that majority of these funds will go to the Army? Does it follow, or is it spread out to the entire AFP, and basically from there it depends on where the funds will go, Army, Navy, Air Force? What is the policy?
Well, that's a very good question, because that has always been a cause of confusion for our public and even for the military, because the task of BCDA is actually just to raise funds. Once we raise the funds and remitted it to the Treasury, we have no role anymore in how it's being divided or how it's being disbursed.
That's right, Department of Defense.
So so the task of allocating the proceeds would now fall on the Department of Defense and the Chief of Staff, the Armed Forces, and the DBM. So we generate the funds, and they're the ones who disburse it.
Okay. Okay, you talked about baselands, and how many properties are we talking about here nationwide?
Oh, well, currently we have about 41,500 hectares of property.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's very big,
Still, this is remaining.
Yes.
41,500 hectares.
Yes, Clark alone is about 35,000 hectares. And then we have 600 hectares in John Hay, another about 300 hectares in Poro Point. Then we have another 600 hectares in Bataan. We are not even including Subic, which is under SBMA.
Okay, you mentioned Clark, but isn't that under Clark Development Corporation already, CDC?
Yes, CDC is a 100% owned subsidiary of BCDA.
Okay.
So to develop, BCDA is an economic catalyst. We are the prime mover of national development.
Yeah.
So because our property is located in different parts of the country, and we created subsidiaries to manage these properties. So in Clark, we have two subsidiaries, the Clark Development Corporation.
In the airport.
Yeah, and whose task is to develop the Freeport, and the Clark International Airport Corporation, whose task is to develop the Clark International Airport. So in the same way, we did a John Hay Management Corporation in John Hay, and Poro Point Management Corporation in Poro Point, La Union.
Now, how is the setup with BCDA and Clark? How is this different from the setup between BCDA and SBMA in Subic?
Oh, well, thank you for the question.
Yes, because
I'll
tell you what, Attorney. My first job out of college was actually with CDC.
Ah, great.
So I know Clark Development Corporation very well.
So you're part of the BCDA family.
Well, in a way.
Yes.
But I never knew that that we were somehow different from SBMA. That's why I want to ask you now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, SBMA is a separate authority, although under Republic Act 7227, BCDA has an oversight function over them. But it's a separate authority, so they're much more autonomous than CDC with BCDA, because CDC is an implementing arm of BCDA.
BCDA, yes.
And it's wholly owned, all the equities of CDC belongs to BCDA. So
how come it happened like that? How come the situation in Subic is different or was different from the situation in Clark? When I mean, logic would tell you that it should be the same, because I mean, they have the same nature, the same background, the same.
Yeah.
How
well,
come?
The original idea is actually just to have one basis conversion development authority.
Sure.
But at that time, I think the circumstances demand, and through the lobby of Mayor Dick Gordon at that time, who's now as a former senator.
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, I think Mayor Dick Gordon at that time was so passionate about, bringing Subic alive again, SBMA again. So he took it upon himself that, to be able to sustain and to rehabilitate Subic.
Have control really of this area. I see where you're going with that.
So that's why it was carved out of the entire basis. Well, not really carved out entirely in a matter of master plan, but just an authority. So he wanted to have full control, and he was able to actually mobilize volunteers to resurrect the Subic Bay Freeport. So.
Okay. So at present, what properties, what areas are BCDA still trying to develop? I mean, you mentioned a handful, but in Metro Manila, let's say.
Oh yes, we still
is
have
still
a lot.
Here in Metro Manila. Which ones?
Well, we have substantial land holdings in the marine area, Marines, where the Philippine Marines are located. So we call it the Bonifacio South Point property, which we actually published for bidding last January. But unfortunately, SM filed a case to secure a temporary restraining order preventing us from bidding the property. Well, they were claiming that there has been a negotiated deal already without property.
This is the Marine Bonifacio Naval Station.
Yes.
This is, as you said, Fort Bonifacio South.
Yes.
So this is completely different from the SM Aura.
Different.
Aura property.
This is different. So we have two issues with SM.
Two issues with SM.
Yeah,
Okay,
and the
there
first
you go.
one was that. Because the offer of in May of 2010, about May 4 of 2010, that's the election time, a few days before the election, SM submitted a unsolicited proposal to BCDA for a negotiated deal on that property.
The marine
property. So they offered like 36,900 per square meter. And I think it was accepted by the board of BCDA a few days after the election.
Okay, so favorable to SM.
Yeah, favorable to SM, but but it's a negotiated deal. So when the President Aquino assumed the presidency, he put a stop to the process because there's no, well, just to be very clear about it, there's no contract yet with SM about that deal.
Yeah.
The process is that for an unsolicited proposal, you have to have a Swiss challenge. So you have to actually offer it to the public to better the offer, and SM would have the right to match.
Okay.
So, but the president, through the Daang Matuwid policy, decided that really to create better value for the government and for the AFP, because the AFP is actually the direct beneficiary of this.
Open to bidding.
Over the bidding. So yeah,
yes.
the president said we just have to bid it out.
Of course.
And to create the best value so that you
get competition, get other people to bid for it.
That's right. And based on our experience in FTI bidding, in fact, the FTI was initially a negotiated deal also with the Ayalas, and the price there was about 14,000 per square meter.
Now, FTI also falls under BCDA.
No. But it shows how the fair market value of the properties are if you bid them out. If you put it in a fair and level playing field, you get the best value for the government.
Maximize value.
Yes.
FTI is Department of Agriculture, no?
Yes, but the one who privatized it is the Department of Finance.